Welcome to Flex That Worx, a podcast for anyone building, managing, or growing a flexible workspace without making things more complicated than they need to be. If you're running a single co-working space, juggling multiple locations, or overseeing a growing network of spaces across towns or cities, this is your space. It's for the operators, the managers, decision makers, the people doing the work to make these places run. This is Flex That Worx, scaling your workspace made simpler and less stressful. See you in the episode. Hello and welcome to Flex That Worx, the podcast put together, designed, produced, all with the operator in mind. So the people who are running co-working spaces and flex spaces in the day-to-day, so that you are getting some practical tips and hearing from people who are active in the industry all the time. Today we are joined by Joe Averill, who is the founder and managing director of Level. They are a workspace advisory firm to tenants in the UK office market. Hi Joe, welcome.
Hi, how are we doing? You okay? Thank you for having me on. Much appreciated.
You're so welcome. And as always, we have Basework CEO Graham Clark here as well today.
Yeah, no, excited.
Hello, Graham.
To chat to Joe on this one. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so would it make sense to kick off, Joe? Do you want to give a little intro to Level in your own words?
Yeah, 100%. So Level, we're a workspace advisory firm. We solely represent tenants on their office searches across the UK and Ireland for leased offices. But we also work across managed and serviced offices as well, where we help our clients find office space all over the globe. We've been doing that now. We're just headed into our 4th year, and we're representing brands, everyone from startups and scale-ups right through to SMEs and even enterprise clients, such as Moonpig, who are FTSE 250, who we've just advised recently. And yeah, we've grown to a team of 4 now. Which is super exciting for us as we're on a growth trajectory and look to scale more across the UK and Ireland.
Fantastic. It's amazing, Joe. Like, that was my understanding when the conversation that we had a couple of months ago, and when I've been looking into your background since, like, you know, very much so the level of disruption that Level is looking to achieve across the market is very interesting. Tell me, why did you choose the name Level for the business?
So essentially, I quite like the branding and the marketing side. So I would say I'm 50% between sales and 50% marketing as well. So I really enjoy those two fields. So when I went through the branding exercise, it was something that I went through myself in terms of a process with the pen and the pad out. And basically, what I was realizing when I was a leasing agent is that there is quite a bit of conflict in the world of commercial property. And, you know, there's a lot of landlords that have representation, but the tenants, when they're going out to search for office space, they more often than not don't have that representation by an agent who's looking out for their best interests, because a lot of the real estate models out there are orientated towards supporting the landlord, because a lot of the agents get paid off the landlord, so they're incentivized to sell as much space as possible and to lock people into longer term contracts and have the benefit of the landlord, which to me posed the question, who's looking after the tenant? So when we chose Level, it was to have a level playing field by solely advising the tenants. And obviously I thought it was quite clever at the time, because there's obviously property connotations in there in terms of, you know, level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. So I was quite happy with that and give myself a big pat on the back with that one.
Yeah. Well, there's always a role for you in brand. You should start a branding agency on the side as well, Joe. See how you get on.
Yes, maybe. Yeah. If you ever need any branding, give me a shout.
So I'm curious, Joe, I know that you started out with a background in tech, did you?
Yes, I did indeed. I was based at Manchester's very first digital hub, the Sharp project, just near Newton Heath, and I worked for a very, very exciting business there at the time called AppLearn. It was my first sort of office job out of university in my sort of early 20s, and it was through a family friend. They were based out in like a small box of an office at the time, but what they were doing was really interesting. They were in the HR technology space. And essentially what was happening in that market is all these multinational companies were rolling out human capital management software, spending 5 or 10 million to standardize all their processes across all of their international workforces to save time, cost, money, and create a more efficient workforce. But the challenge was when they were rolling out the software, nobody was actually utilizing the software. And the company that I was at was basically stating that the challenge in the industry was nobody was budgeting for what was called digital adoption. So how are you going to actually get people to use the tool and invest in the tool and go through that change management piece? Because a lot of the vendors that were selling the software was saying that the tool was intuitive enough that you didn't need training, etc. So we were selling a solution to a challenge that these HR technologists didn't realize that they were going to have. So we were selling into America maybe because they were 4 or 5 years ahead of us in the tech with those people that had been burnt in the process before. So that was a real great experience for me, starting off there in my early 20s and then working my way up at 23, 24, selling 3-year software SaaS subscriptions that are, 6, 7 figures. So I was in boardrooms with multinational companies and some great businesses and great exposure at the time. So I always thank myself really lucky and count myself really lucky. I'm very thankful for that experience because I got so much exposure at such a young age to so many really intelligent people, whether that's inside the business or outside the business. And it was a really entrepreneurial environment.
It's incredible. It's, as you say, it's so influential. It really sets you up on a certain path, doesn't it? I wonder if you've any free time, if you want to come and do a bit of moonlighting for BaseWorks there with all that SaaS experience.
Anytime. I do your branding as well, let me know.
So tell me this, how has Level kind of landed in the market? What you're doing is pretty disruptive. What's the reception been like?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you look at if you look at what we do in the London market, it's quite sort of saturated with other players that are working across different industries. I'd say where we're slightly different is the fact that we represent tenants solely across serviced, managed and leased offices across the whole trajectory. So no matter what type of office they're looking at, we can support them across the UK. In terms of Manchester, I would say that we're a little bit more disruptive in the regional markets, maybe ruffling a few feathers a little bit more, because we're one of the only companies that are operating on a solely tenant side in the city at the minute. So I would say that basically, yeah, operating across service, managed and leased offices. So regionally, I would say that we've shaken the markets up a little bit. In London, I would say that there's a few more operators similar to us in there, and it's a bit more of a saturated market. So they're used to seeing businesses like us. But even in London, I would say that we're not very transactional. We're very much a relationship business, and that shines through when we're speaking to customers and the relationships that we build. And what we've done really well is the clients that we've operated with and done a really good job in Manchester for. We're now representing these businesses and getting national mandates for them across the country because they'll trust us to go into Bristol for them, into Birmingham, into London. And that the way that the business is evolving is really good to see because that was what the vision was essentially, is to expand across the UK, and it's now slowly but surely coming to fruition.
Fantastic. That must feel very satisfying.
Do you know what? It really does, because it's been a slog. The business has been built with no investment, no director's loan. It was just literally straight off the bat, getting into sharing my brother's office, going in there, which I was lucky to have, which was a little mill outside of Manchester in a place called Failsworth. I had a whiteboard in there, and then it was cold calling, getting out to people, reaching out, and then eventually after 2 years, I had enough of sort of a buffer, I suppose you could say, to give me the comfort to hire the first person, because this is my first venture. I've never done it before, and I'll have in the past. I'm getting a lot better. I was a bit of a worrier at the time when I set my business up about the money side of things. It's something that I'd never done. I was going in completely blind essentially. So to get where we are now, going into year 4 with the team of 4, I've just come from being in the office with the guys this morning, and we've got searches on in Jersey, Manchester, Bristol, Birmingham, London, USA, that bit is really, really rewarding when you've spent those 2 years sort of. I know that I've been in the office with my brother, but they're still pretty lonely when you're getting the business off the ground. But now it's great. I'm really, really proud of where we're at as a business. We've got the technology in there. We've got some brilliant processes. And in Manchester, it's a really community-led place. So we've had some serious operators give us their time and day and come in and help us just because they want us to support a startup and a growing business. And some of them have been there and done it. So yeah, we've been really blessed in that respect to have some great people advising us and working in the business and on the business for us.
You're certainly in a fantastic city for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
We were
you
having a
really
little
are.
earlier, weren't we? And I just I'm always going to be biased because I'm born and raised here in Manchester, but I mean everything that we've got here is just phenomenal. We've got huge banks moving here, those that are here expanding. We've got the two Manchester football clubs. Albeit United aren't firing on all cylinders much these days, but hopefully that will change as a United fan. We've got the three leading universities: Manchester Met, Salford. We've got great investment networks in here. The public and private sector work really close together, which is a rarity for a lot of districts or counties. So yeah, it is a great city. Everything's within walking distance, and we've got some great case studies of some real, successful businesses that have started out of here and scaling up. And I think that's one of the best things for me looking at Manchester now is what's quite exciting is, particularly in the tech sector, you've got these businesses that are now, some of these businesses, Matillion, for example, that have reached the unicorn status. And the brilliant thing for the city is that talent now filters through into Manchester of those know-hows, and even the businesses that might have failed that have got up to quite a successful level, those learning lessons of what to do and what not to do are sometimes equally as important. So yeah, it is a really great place to be at the minute. Not without its teething issues in the property sector as well within the Manchester market, but again I think that's across the board.
But just on that
It's
one, Joe, with side Henry, on that point with the unicorns and the startups that succeed and the startups that fail, and that's just par for the course as we all know. But to your point there, when a startup may not be successful, it does leave the talent doesn't, the people don't forget the skills they've learned during those phases. And I think you're a prime example of that. Obviously the business you worked in was incredibly successful, but it armed you with a toolkit where literally all you had was a whiteboard, a marker, and a phone, and you got going from there. So I think you're a prime example of a of a you know a tech startup, producing talent and firing them out into the market.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And I think that was what the great thing was at the time when we were working at the startup, the tech startup, is the guy that was CEO and helm of the business, at the helm of the business. He was already an exited founder of an IT business. So we were schooled so well from a B2B sales point of view, from a process, from, you know, the graduates or the youngsters who were filling the hopper, and I still still remember being incentivized to put as many in a day, and I think it was every tranche of 10 or 15 leads you'd get an extra bit for your commission. So you were really invested into finding the right people and making sure the quality of the information going into the CRM was great. And then that role enabled you to become so great at researching
Hmm.
because the business is scaling so quickly. And when the business is scaling so quickly, the product's scaling, and that means the value proposition is changing. So that means that you might not be selling to the same person as you was before. So as a salesperson, and I am a salesman through and through, that experience is amazing because you're now learning how to sell to a CEO, to a CFO, to a COO, and learning how that language changes and having the emotional intelligence to put yourself in those people with those job roles shoes and understand what are their pain points and learn to talk their language, and how you're going to sort of help them to overcome those solutions. And that was brilliant for me, from doing the research to then jumping on the phones, the cold calls, because that was the next step from promotion. And you'd have all these skills that, because you had the research, it made the cold calling so much easier, because you go in a little bit warmer of understanding the organization, what software they're using, etc., etc. And then the next promotion up above that was the business development role, where you're getting out and presenting. And I always remember going into Allied Irish Bank at 24 and just red face, like sweating, like when it comes to you, when it's your opportunity to speak. But at the same time, that those things end up building the confidence, despite being nervous in your first
Yeah.
couple of goes.
Yeah, but again, as I said, it's a testament to you. Then when you're in rooms at C-suite, that first opening your mouth in a public in a room like that, you only do that that first time once, right? And then after that, it just becomes second nature. My thoughts then, though, Joe, just kind of going over to you know, coming back to kind of co-work and flex space operators, and clearly you have an incredible understanding of the path and the structure and the processes. If you were talking to a co-working space manager, essentially, who has to wear all of these hats, what type of advice would you give them? I know, and it's parallel to what you do, or but what kind of advice would you give to operators that may use a software like our own Baseworks?
Exactly that. At first, I would say understand the marketplace, and now with how technology is advancing, it's understanding the technological landscape and understanding how you can implement those pieces of technology to make your job easier, especially those that are now rolling out multiple sites. For them to have a solution such as Baseworks with what you're doing can add absolutely incredible amounts of value, because you're helping to sort of take that admin and back end processes off them. And I think there's so much great tech out there now for these managers to understand and have a look at, that they need to go out there and assess the technological solutions that can help them on a day-to-day basis. Another bit of advice, which I'm really, really strong on, is I've been in so many co-working spaces, and especially these with multiple sites. Let's say you have 5 or 6 buildings in a smaller city, in one of the regional cities outside of London. Your Manchesters, your Birminghams, or even over in Ireland, your Belfasts and your Dublins, etc. If you have these multiple sites, it's all about putting yourself in the shoes of the customer and understanding how you can support them beyond providing them a space. And I've seen a few people putting events on and stuff like that, but I still think that there is room for improvement of understanding how you can get a deeper understanding of this journey that the client or the customer is on, in terms of, are they looking to raise investment? If they are looking to raise investment, have they considered private equity, or other packages out there such as venture debt that might not dilute the control? Who are they looking to sell to? What are the biggest pain points in the organization at the minute? Is it hiring? Is it culture? And understanding that wider picture of the organization and taking a deep interest in it, and actually facilitating those introductions, because those people with the solutions might be in your space. They might be in your one of your 8 or 10 different sites, and that goes such a long way to actually supporting these business, because it's going to benefit everybody essentially from having that commercial nous. And I think that is something people put events on, etc., and they might be some fun events, which, don't get me wrong, I go to a lot of the fun events which I quite enjoy, but there's also an element of having those commercial events on where you can actually sit down one-on-one with the founder, especially if you're somebody that's got a great network, which you should have as a general manager or a community manager in a co-working space, and actually go through a process with the founders or part of their senior leadership team, and understand how you can actually add value, because that's going to help for retention. It's going to help support the business, and it's going to help you probably have a different offering. that some people don't have. And I tell you what, I did go and do some viewings the other month in Dublin, and there was a guy, I think he's called Sean, and he was at one of the co-working spaces called Grafters, and he's probably one of the people, rare people that had like a real deep understanding of that sort of like hospitality side of things blended with a commercial um nous essentially, yeah. And yeah, that I would say.
I absolutely love that point. And like we have seen some spaces here in Ireland, especially doing it particularly well. I won't name names so as not to exclude any others. But and one thing that happens here in our own space is some government funded pathway to innovation kind of programs and things as well, you know. But you know, the last one that was on here got me thinking exactly to your point that like actually most hubs probably have the wherewithal to run that themselves just based on the knowledge in the business and the kind of the black books in the business if people actually got together and shared their knowledge. And like exactly that point, so many people are at different stages. And I find even here like we'd be considered with Baseworks now, I suppose it's definitely entrepreneurial given how Graham started the business. For me, I'm working for the business. So I'd be speaking more in terms of that kind of set process that you were chatting about earlier, the first role you were in. But I'll actually start chatting to some of the girls here who are running their own businesses who maybe haven't gone through that structure. Because they're in like a less traditional kind of corporate space, but they're running their own businesses and they still need the same framework. And then they're having cool ideas about events and things and stuff they're seeing in the market that we can bring into the corporate side of things to keep things more interesting. So there's the very structured ways to bring in the investment and like chat about what stages they're at in terms of raising funding or any of that, and then also just helping each other to shape some frameworks and process and systems and things as well, like you know, to help things push along.
And I think that's brilliant. And you know, the people that you're delivering that for must have so much appreciation because it's challenging. You know, work is challenging whether you're part of the team, whether you're a founder, whether you're a part of the SLT. It can all be challenging in terms of workload, etc. So if you've got somebody that you feel like is a trusted partner delivering that work that you're doing and bringing, you know, strategic frameworks together to help them with that investment, then you know that relationship is going to be.
Massively beneficial. And in terms of the office market as a whole, like where are you seeing it sitting at the moment? Where do you see it moving to?
So if we talk about I'd say touch upon the Manchester market. Last year we did 1.22 million square feet as a city in the leased office market, but that data is fairly skewed because you're having occupiers like Bank of New York, BNY Mellon taking 220,000 square feet of that take up, which is considerable in you know, in the take up of 1.22 million. So there's some large transactions, and the I feel like a bit of a stuck record because I've said this a few times, but I'll share this with you as well. Pre-pandemic, it was a lot of fast growth tech businesses that were fueling Manchester's office market, and that predominantly was because the cost of money was so cheap. The, you know, 0.5% interest rates. So Manchester's office market was underpinned by local Manchester technology, media, and telecoms businesses because they're all raising significant amounts of capital because the cost of money was cheap. So you had businesses raising, you know, Series A's, Series B's, growing from 10 people to 50 people, 50 people to 100 people. And obviously with that needing office space. So there was a lot of Manchester businesses that were thriving in that market. Now, post-pandemic, we are at a point where the pendulum has shifted because the cost of money now is more expensive. So there's been sort of a standoff between investors and investees. Investors valuing the business down here and investees valuing the business up here. So there's been less capital fueling that local market. So what we've seen is actually a lot of blue chip occupiers fueling Manchester office market now. The likes of Channel 4 coming into Manchester, Arm Holdings, S&P Global, international law firms expanding such as Hill Dickinson that have underpinned the office market. As for more of the flexible office space market, I think what we've seen now is the businesses in Manchester have become quite mature to serviced office space, and obviously they've been previously familiar with leased office space as well. I think where the market is going to go in Manchester in particular is these businesses that are in serviced office space and they've grown. Some of them may stick around, but a lot of the ones that we've represented that are growing want to find their own space, but they want all the benefits of service offices and having that flexibility in them. So Manchester's just behind London in terms of market activity, and with us operating in London as well, we've seen a lot of these managed deals, which blend the best of both worlds of leased office space and serviced office space. And we're seeing a lot of these managed operators now who want to come in and partner with landlords and create these bespoke private suites, with meeting rooms, phone booths, kitchenetting, but still wrap around the service levels around that space, such as cleaning, utilities, even stocking the fridge from teas and coffees, giving that occupier their own private space with a bit more room than they get in terms of the space ratios. Because a lot of Manchester's office occupiers are working at one person to every 30 or one person to every 45 square feet. Whereas if they step into managed space, they're going to be getting probably one person to every 60 square feet. So they're going to be getting a little bit of extra room, their own private space, but still all that service wraparound and that flexibility in terms of short-term leases, but everything included. Because some occupiers in some occupiers in service space that have never done lease before have never appreciated that when they get the costs from an agent, it's just occupational costs, so rent rate, service charge. So they're not really familiar the fact that they might have to pay solicitors' fees for the lease. They'll have to get the cleaning costs, add utility costs in, internet costs, etc. So that wraparound, I think the managed spaces will become really imperative in Manchester in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, and the London operators are already circulating Manchester. So I think they'll come in pretty soon. That benefits the tenant because they've got like pure flexibility, but it also benefits the landlord because they've now can take a lease space which may be sat there and create a more of a managed offering to it as well. But they then don't just market that in front of the traditional leased agents. They can then market it in front of serviced office brokers across the country as well. So it gives them more opportunity to market their product. So it works for everybody. It works for us as an office advisory firm. It works for the tenants and it works for the landlords, and it even works for the leasing agents as well because they still get paid on the building they're appointed on.
And is that a part of your role then as the representative of the tenant, is to make sure that they have like all the costs outlined, that everything is there for them? There's nothing's hidden, everything's transparent. Is that a part of your role there as well, Joe, when you say you put the tenant first?
Yeah, 100%. That's something, again, there's lots of things that I'm proud of in the business, but one of them is our trusty spreadsheets, which have been pulled apart and vetted by, some of the top CFOs in the country, so that work really well, which we're super proud of. So we cover absolutely everything. We have the operating costs and we have the fixed costs in any office search in particular on the lease side, breaking down rents, rates, service charge, utilities. We'll even do the due diligence on the building to understand the price per kilowatt in terms of the energy price, because obviously that's significantly different if somebody's got it locked in. So again, when the pre-pandemic, when we had the troubles in Ukraine and Russia, the energy prices shot up. So we did a diligence on a building for a client, and one of them had luckily booked in a fixed rate at 29 pence per kilowattage hour. The other hadn't, and it had shot up to around above 50 pence per kilowattage hour. And that's significant if somebody's using, 50, 60,000 kilowatts per year. So we go into that side of things. For the fixed cost, we make sure that we cover the schedule of condition, the stamp duty fee, if there is going to be one, if they're over the threshold, any solicitor costs, and we put everything in, and cleaning costs. And if they want us to make introductions off the back of that for a more accurate quote on their actual specifications, then we can facilitate the introductions to the relevant parties. And if they want 2 or 3 for each service line, then we're more than happy to facilitate that as well, so they can do their own vetting.
Like, imagine this. I imagine the spreadsheet is fairly robust and fairly comprehensive. But I suppose, every client is different. I suppose, has there ever been like those quirky asks or requests? I suppose they call them riders in the music industry. Has there been any kind of quirky requests where like, Jesus, like, can't be doing that, or kind of what we can do is there any trends you're seeing in demands for people that are looking for a service offices, flex space now as well?
Um, we haven't had any like outlandish requests. They might say, we want to add video conferencing on there and stuff like that, and it just means an additional phone call for us to pick up the phone to another party and ask for some quotes on their specifications. There might be a few tweaks or a few additions, and we'll just make sure that we vet it. But also, they may have their own suppliers as well. So where we may have estimated a cost, we do it on Google Sheets, so they've got access to it as well. So they have that fluidity. And in terms of any particular trends, we're seeing um, what the industry is calling right sizing, and the flight to quality. So these businesses now that have changed working practices after the pandemic, they're now looking at how they work. So they're looking at maybe choosing a smaller space because not everybody's in, and some of the team are hybrid or fully remote. But they're looking at these options that have like the quality there, so that fit in with their teams. So a lot of our tech clients or clients in the finance industry, they might have these all hands meetings once a month. So they might want a space that's fit for purpose for them. And if they have overflow in one day, they have an additional breakout space. But they'd also want somewhere that they can have an auditorium for all their all hands meetings, making sure that the building with a lot of businesses going B Corp now, we're seeing more and more firms looking for ESG friendly buildings and sustainable spaces. And in terms of the actual space itself, people are wanting it to be more functional in terms of, maybe having the kitchenette in there and not just shared amenity. Phone booths are massive now because everybody's jumping on client calls or getting in the Zoom pods and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people's trends in terms of what they're choosing now really aligns itself to this managed space, which is taken off in London, but I think will start to fly through the regions more so.
But everything you said there, Joe, like they're all practical things. People
Yeah,
just want good, high spec design and just a good environment to work in. I mean,
yeah.
is anybody asking for pool tables or ping pong tables or slides or I mean, are we past that now when it comes to offices and workspaces, do you think?
I think with everything, it's sort of personal taste and personal choice. I did have one client who said that the pool table is a must, that he's coming over and transferring in the office. But then again, we're doing some office searches in London for a client now, and they're pulling. I won't name the name of the operator, but they're pulling them out of an operator at the minute because he said, we're um suits, ties, shirts, and I'm in this operation where beer taps start at 2 p.m. and stuff like that. So that I've noticed more of a trend that is stepping away from that, and it's quite interesting. Some people have, you know, have said what is functional, what is practical, and when they have chosen some of these spaces that do have all the bells and whistles, actually are the team using them frequently enough to warrant them being in the space.
The most incredible space at GCUC London last week. We were in a few incredible spaces, but one of them was just knockout. Even when you walked in, the decor downstairs in the building was off the charts. There was a full
Really?
cinema
Oh,
a physio treatment room, a
Wow.
spa where you can go in and get your hair done, the whole setup for hairstyling. There was a lady sitting there waiting to do nails with 3 stations for people to get their nails done. I didn't go into the gents, so I don't know what he had on offer to you, but this was on the ladies' side of things anyway. There was a sauna, there was a plunge pool downstairs.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, I'd get no work done. There was a bar. There was like absolutely phenomenal. And like double story full atrium with the bar, the most incredible decor, like so tasteful, stunning. And these full LED screens that like appeared to be archways in a brick wall, but they were like full color screens playing, like they had scenes of Ireland, they had the Cliffs of Moher coming up, and they had dates, and like, yeah, it was just incredible. Oh, and
Yeah.
a gym that was full of
of
Peloton
course.
bikes,
Really?
like 15 Peloton bikes looking down over the atrium, and the workspace wasn't fully ready yet.
Right.
But they still had occupancy because people were just using the kind of co-working open spaces. There was some hot desking kind of library vibes that people were still using, even though the full offices weren't ready yet. Really phenomenal, and it makes you wonder. Like they then had a rooftop bar, of course, with balcony area looking out over Tower Bridge. Um, and just makes you wonder, like, I'd say there is no limit, like, in terms of, apparently this was one architect's vision, one guy's vision, and he executed the whole way through down to the light bulbs. And what fascinated me was like even the ceiling was styled in every single room. So like even in the spa, it was like a hammered kind of a copper on the ceiling. In the bar area, it was like panelled wood with this mesh in between all the light bulbs.
Really? You're
My
selling it to
standards
me.
getting higher and higher, Graham. Just watch out there.
Yeah.
I'll be putting in requests.
You can put them into Elma and the team there in the Ludgate.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they'd love to hear about my trip.
I'll
But
I'll have to
so
try
you,
that.
yeah, and like you can see how if people are catering to that, we talk all the time about knowing your brand and knowing your audience and knowing your culture. And that's exactly what you're speaking to there. I mean, it sounds like a total mismatch that business ended up in that with that operator, or maybe one or the other evolved over time and it was no longer a fit and then they needed to move on. But you can see how if you are speaking to that higher end business or entrepreneur, whoever it might be, that at some point, like, you know, they have to keep raising the bar. That's the thing about being in New York or London or any of the capital cities. They have to be always raising the bar as well, don't they?
Yeah, 100%. And you just speaking there as well around this fitness and wellness. That's one thing that I didn't touch upon. But when I said that these businesses are moving to quality, it is for higher levels of amenity. But I think that's the way that it's going to go, and it's the way that it's going because I mean, everybody now that is remote or hybrid working, there's a lot of people that are into their fitness and the wellness. And I think if you sort of do encompass that in these city centres, it will be more incentivizing for these um, team members and the people to sort of come back into the city if there's that community that is centered around wellness and health, well-being. There's something that's the down the road is gone into one of the buildings, which is like around cryotherapy. There's a stretch station going into another building. And I think now with like the rise of AI and health and well-being, you see more people want to spend their time in a networking capacity with other founders that don't necessarily revolve around the drinking side of things. So I think the health and wellness is definitely a strategy for these operators and these landlords to consider moving forward. It would just be interesting to see how much it does actually impact that return to office.
One of the best lines I've heard recently was, you know, as an employer, you have to earn the commute. You have to earn your employees' commute. You have to make it worthwhile for them to get up, get dressed, get on the bus, get in the train. I've been quoted as saying that previously, but like describe it, listening to Anne-Marie describe that space there. Like you'd wake up in the morning, in for a sauna, do a bit of a workout,
Yeah,
get
yeah,
the. You're right. I might do a bit of work after all that.
yeah. It might do the
Long
opposite.
drive home, I better head off.
Yeah, yeah,
Worth coming in for the sauna though,
Yeah.
shockingly.
yeah. That'll do the opposite to you. You struggle to
Mm.
get home after that.
Yeah. But to touch on your other
Yeah.
point then, Joe, you were saying about the suit and ties versus, you know, the beer taps and the and the pool tables. And I've always kind of hypothesized, is that down to the fact that co-working and the open plan co-working spaces traditionally would have been, targeted or created by freelancers, startups, the kind of entrepreneurial kind of ecosystem type of character. And then we've always had shared our serviced offices, right? And in post COVID, given the advantages of flexible contracts and look, there's a lot of people now working from home, and there's a lot of, I suppose, office buildings now tailoring how they operate. Are we seeing, this is, I suppose, is flex offices and flex work, is that just the smashing together of co-working and serviced offices? Would that be a fair hypothesis in a sense?
I think so, but I think it's now getting so competitive that everybody is designing their own niches, and with competitive fields, it forces people to evolve. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would agree with you. There is a clash there between the two, and I also think that the ones to dominate in the early days, everybody knows sort of the name that's associated with serviced office spaces, WeWork, and that's the way that
Mhm.
they created those environments, which was less so on the office space, but more so on the community and
Mhm.
the places for people to meet and people to connect. But there's some great diversity now in terms of these different operations that are out there. We've got an operator in Manchester, which is in a few different locations across the UK that you might be familiar with, called Gilbanks, and they're quite on the contrary to that co-working side. There's no beers and pizza events. It's for professional services. They target the legal firms, private equity houses, banks, etc.
Mhm.
And they've done really well off the back of that in terms of having a niche. And I
Yeah.
think that's what will happen in terms of the field, in terms of the co-working. There might be certain clashes, but I think the industry will continue to evolve.
I think you're spot on. I think it's vitally. People, we always talk about how important it is to know who your customer is, but I think on the flip, it's also incredibly important to know who your customers definitely are not, and stay away from
Yeah.
it, because it needs to be win-win. And if it's a win-lose, and you think, "Oh, I'll get these guys in for 6 months or whatever it is," you'll end up falling on your face. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really important to understand what you stand for and what you don't stand for in your space, and crafting that niche, crafting that proposition. And it's so hard because at the end of the day, you've got businesses to run, and sometimes you want to get the capital in, and the opportunities might not be so fluid. And we had an instance in Manchester as a point to that, and to be fair, this operation in Manchester turned around down hundreds of thousands, if not £1 million worth of business over the course of 6 to 12 months, because they had created a district that was purely for tech businesses, and they allowed a certain amount of professional services businesses to come in. So, for example, one or two recruitment firms, etc. So when that demand was fulfilled, if any more recruitment businesses were to come into that building, they'd turn away.
Mhm.
And it just so happens that after around like 12 months of resilience, it was showing that a lot of the recruitment firms were underpinning the market, and they just had to sort of go for those opportunities. And now the market's shifted again, and they're looking at different occupiers. But it is really difficult at the time, because if you look at all these operations that targeted the TMT sector, the tech, the media, the telecoms firms, they did so when that sector was absolutely thriving at the time, and things change and move, so you have to be able to adapt and be flexible. It's really hard to go in and be like super niche, for example, and say we represent and attract fintech occupiers, because that market isn't you know massive, especially not in the regions.
Mhm.
So yeah, massively agree with you on that. You do have to sort of set your parameters of who you want in there, and you have to be mindful that you don't have a bad apple in the space. But sometimes it can be really hard when there's not a plethora of opportunities about.
Absolutely. Joe, one thing we're we're always looking to do with the podcast with Flex That Worx is keep it like very practical, and sometimes that means airing things that maybe are just lessons to all of us at some stage in life. So is there anything that you would say is like a red flag, or anything that you have seen an operator or a tenant do that you would love to advise somebody against doing? Like, what do people need to look out for? Any kind of mishaps that you've seen happen that people should look out for, be it operators looking to maybe scale up their space and take offices, or the tenants that you deal with directly, because we do know that lots of people who listen are in the office space as well.
Yeah, I think with the operators, at the end of the day, it has to be a partnership mentality, and it may sound simple to say that, but there are certain operations out there that will look to do tactics such as, if you don't hand in your notice within 3 months of your lease expiry, then we're going to auto renew you into another 12-month contract. And I think things like that, although they may be protecting your business, it's just at some point going to earn yourself a bad reputation. So I think if you can have more of a mentality of a partnership as rather than us versus them, and focus on the relationships side of thing, and building a great relationship with that business. In the instance that they do move out, they're always going to be a great case study for you and say great things. You only have one opportunity at a first impression. So if you can be that person that can work with the tenant and create, as I say, that partnership, not just in terms of the contracts that you offer them, but the way that you behave with them, and the way that you conduct yourself and your business and the processes, etc., are all focused around how you can partner with these businesses, I think that stands in good stead. And sometimes you have to, think about your relationships more than you do locking somebody in for another sort of 12 months, because it can shoot you in the foot in the short term. So I would say have a long-term vision which focuses on partnerships and relationships, not transactions. And on the flip side, you asked me around the tenant side of things. I think the tenant just needs to do the due diligence. There is a lot of options out there, and a lot of these tenants spend a significant amount of time thinking that they can go and do this because it's an office search and they can go on Rightmove, etc. But there's so much data that they don't track in terms of what are the occupancy levels in that building, who is the owner, is it somebody that's client facing and a private individual that's they're going to get time to see, or is it a big fund in London that they may not get the time or even ever meet. So I think that is something that I would say to the tenants that are looking out is, it's not just going on Rightmove and searching a few options. There is a strategy to it to ensure, one, you do your real estate due diligence and cover every single option which aligns with your brief in your target location, but understand that you're tracking all of the data to get the most out of your office search. Whether that's tracking the level of amenity in these buildings for your people, understanding the occupancy levels in the building to ensure that you get best value for money when you do sign for the deal, and also making sure you get the best value for both the business and for your people when you're going out delivering these office searches.
That makes me ask as well, is there much of a kind of off-market opportunity piece that tenants have access through working with Level?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point. That's another thing. Again, I've got a great example of that. There was a business that was out in the market, and they've been looking. I picked up the phone to them probably around 3 months ago, and they just raised a Series C. They'd loved this building that they'd been to see, which was a sort of an old warehouse kind of vibe, but it's been operated really well, and it's a tech for tech businesses. And I said to him on the phone, well, I said, working with us on this basis, he said, there's no occupancy levels, but I said, you want to be in a few months' time. And I said, I happen to know whether the tenants that's going to be moving out that has your same office requirement that you need and can fit the 40 desks. However, the operator doesn't know that they're going to be moving out. So yeah, 100%, it's a massive value. As I say, going to be hugely biased, but it's true. Working with us is going to get you so much more value, because we do things like that and add the value of unearthing these off-market opportunities, and it's what we pride ourselves on. Is finding these options that might be a little bit left field, or somebody might not have considered before, and that they might not come across with a general search.
And so much of that comes back to the relationships as well. And then when people are looking to sell these spaces, just for a little gentle Baseworks plug now, in terms of like software or tech to manage the offices, promote them, sell them, let people book tours, transact, what role do you see? Do you kind of keep eyes on what happens once your tenant moves into an office? If it's like, would you see many operators who are then trying to sell the offices, or would most of your audience be people who are taking them for their own brand and they're already booked, populated before they move in? Or do you see many people with leases looking to fill the offices after the fact? Because for Baseworks, we have operators who are managing co-working, hot desks, meeting rooms, they're running events, but they're also selling offices as well. And so that's what we have an offices module for within the software. So would you ever interact much with operators who are looking to shift office space and it's not full lease? Maybe they come to you and you've tenants who are looking, maybe that falls in under the serviced piece, I suppose, really, and it's within the brand then, is it?
Yeah, so is that more so if the operators have got somebody that's locked in for 12 months and they might want to get out early, so they're going to start marketing the space early, do you mean?
Yeah, it could be, or before they even get that 12-month client in. Like sometimes operators are remodeling the space, they're like restructuring, and we chat to a lot of operators who are saying we've kind of got rid of the hot desking now and we're just doing offices. So we've got like empty offices and they're waiting to get them sold. So then they're looking to see how they can best promote them and get clients in who are the right fit, and then manage every element of the contract and everything.
Yeah, and that's definitely something, that role definitely sits with the general managers and the co-working managers of the spaces, as we touched upon before. We as a business, at Level, we sign up to all the subscriptions and all the availabilities, etc. So we do keep a tab on it. I suppose we could get a little bit better in terms of our communication, of understanding those where they might be restructuring a space, etc. Or there might be an element of change within the business. Let's say a big tenant of 100 desks comes out and they might be modelling smaller suites. But yeah, we do try and keep our ear to the ground and understand what's going on in the market, and what changes are happening. I've actually been guilty of not being as good as that, and that's what I'm encouraging the team to do better at, because when I'm looking at the business and driving the vision and the strategy, etc., as I said before, around my time and spending time at the events, not with the property events, but more at the occupier events, I think the same is true in the business side. I'll very much pick up the phone when there's a deal, but that's only because of the time on my hands at the minute. But we've got a team now, which I'm encouraging, get out, meet the operators, have a coffee with them, build relationships, and they're doing that, and doing a great job, and enhancing the area of the business that I had neglected.
And well, only through necessity, right? You got to where you are because you did it that way. So
Yes.
everything in good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also the piece, like I suppose it puts you in the position then of operators being able to speak what they're planning before they've done it. So when you've got those relationships built, you hear the murmurings, you hear, people saying, well, I'm thinking of doing this, but my space is currently set up this way and our memberships are running this way, and I know how to sell this structure. So what would it mean if I restructured? How would it impact my tech? What would I need to set up or wind down within the system? Those are conversations we have, with operators. So we'll chat to people who are like getting in touch and they've been running, memberships and desks meeting rooms, the whole lot through Baseworks for a long time. And now they're actually going to put some offices on the system, and they haven't done it before. At that space that I mentioned to you, it was a huckletree space, but they're going to, they have a large square footage on the top floor, and they're actually just going to put in 4 massive offices rather than, and they were talking through the potential for smaller offices and a greater volume of them, but they're actually going to do a way higher standard of managed space in just the 4 offices. So I guess for them, I was thinking about, they're bringing that a very different offering to market. Now the whole place is premium, of course, but it's a little bit of a different market again then for those offices, and they'll be quite targeted, probably looking to get those 4 filled, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great value proposition, honestly, and there's definitely a huge gap for that in the market because as advisors or brokers in the marketplace, part of your level of service needs to be the fact that you've got your finger on the pulse and understanding these options that other people might not be considering and looking at. So I definitely see that as a massive positive for your use of the technology to get that information from the operator party to the brokers. Because if there's 2 people, for example, in our field, 2 or 3 competitors working one lead, and we're all working it because we're not exclusively retained, then the difference is going to be the market knowledge and unearthing options which the other parties aren't looking into.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, if any of them are looking to get additional tenants into their space. And the other thing is, like, you know, the whole return to work thing and corporates with space. And I know you're a broker, so block your ears, but
Yeah.
that element whereby they might want to offer some of their own offices out and not know how to manage that, you know?
Oh no,
Um,
100%. We're massive advocates for that, by the way, as well. And we're creating like small sublease listings for maybe 3, 4, 5 of our lease clients that are either looking to get out, and market the whole space. But yeah, we're massive advocates for that because it's great for the businesses that are locked in, even though we might not be earning the same fees or any fees out of it. Yeah, it's great what you're doing.
Occupancy is always good for business. It's better than
Yeah,
a space
yeah,
sitting empty. Yeah, it's a better news
Mhm.
story for sure. And if
yeah.
you're looking for a light but powerful tool to help you sell your offices, you can check out Baseworks.
Love it,
We will not
love it.
plug on the podcast. That's fantastic. Joe, any other insights? What do you kind of see coming? I have intentionally not said the words, what do you think about Flex? What's happening with AI? And we haven't talked about data. But if there's anything on those things that you want to.
Um, yeah, no, I think I'm pretty much covered on there. Obviously, I can go into the AI chat, but I think it's moving at such a pace in terms of AI and what's happening. I'm yet to see where the true value lies for the commercial property sector at the minute. I mean, I think there's that fear sometimes that you're missing out and you're not delivering things, especially when you're seeing all these news stories of these businesses training up, etc. But I mean, for me personally, in terms of the use of artificial intelligence, is just we're using it. I've got an AI assistant which is absolutely brilliant for me in terms of helping me respond quicker. One of our values in the business is urgency. We move with speed. We want to develop the reputation for doing things fast. It all encompasses a part of the service level. So I think AI is great for that if you can get it to integrate into some of your existing tools. I think the fact that you can create your own agents and train them up. For me, it works really well on certain responses when reviewing documents and stuff where I've trained a couple of the agents up and they can now review certain documents which are standard, um, with some all the standard documents that we typically get that might have a few changes and alters on certain clauses. And like the speed of response time is absolutely fantastic. And I think your role then very much switches to training the agents, and also quality control, where you're reviewing and still making sure that everything's good and everything's nothing's been missed. So I'd be lying if I said I was an expert in the field of AI. It's something that I'm not focused on too much at the minute because my whole vision at the minute is focused on scaling the business and acquiring more customers. And with the technology that I've seen in AI at the minute, there's some great email marketing tools and stuff like that. I don't think the voice technology is quite there. So for us at the minute, I think we've embedded enough AI to make us more forward thinking than maybe 75-80% of the rest of the market out of there. But it's something that I'm keeping one eye on. But I don't want to get all consumed because the market moves so quick. I've cancelled 2 or 3 tools already, and just see how it plays out. There's still a lot of maturing for that market to do before I get too invested into the latest AI technology. For me personally, others may disagree.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Like, I mean, we saw it with blockchain way back. I remember people trying to shoehorn blockchain into every thing they possibly could. And I think, look, AI is fantastic and it can solve a lot of problems for you. But to your point there, I'm turning on tools, I'm turning off tools, I'm keeping the eye out. And like, if it solves a problem for me, brilliant. Drive it on, pay the subscription, and embed it in your processes. But I think we are kind of in that stage where everybody's just going around saying AI, 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 um, and potentially, over applying it in places where it's probably not needed yet. You know.
And yeah, it just reminds me of the COVID times where all the restaurants invested into respacing the hospitality and the restaurants and stuff like that, and invested a significant amount of time for it not to apply any longer. And I think that's how I view this space at the minute, is moving at such a rate. As long as I've got the tools that help me to respond quicker and do my role even more efficiently. I'm really happy with the tools that we've got in. Um, and I don't think we need to be first to the party when it comes to AI. There's a lot of great people who are focused on building the solutions, who are AI specialists. I'm not an AI specialist. I don't profess to be, but when someone makes a great tool that I can implement, I'll definitely test it and use it. And if it works, I'll implement it into the business. And if it loses its value, we'll do what we do. Where our fractional COO is very sort of strict with all the tech. If we're not using it, he'll see we're not using it and he'll challenge us on it, and we'll cancel those that don't fit. So I think it's a really exciting and interesting space. The way that it's helping me at the minute is absolutely phenomenal. But I think we've got the right amount of tools at the minute. But I'm excited to see how it evolves and see what else it can do for us as a business.
That's brilliant, Joe. Thanks so much. It's fantastic chat. I was going to ask you, have you got one prediction for the future of flexible work?
I think the only prediction that I do have is I just think that we're going to become more integrated um, as founders, business owners, teams, people. And this isn't the case in all instances, but I think a lot of the times the four walls are going to go down and we're going to become more collaborative, especially with the rise of AI and people setting up their own businesses, etc. I think there's a lot of the more people that I'm speaking to now. A lot of them want to go off and try new things, whether it's freelancing, setting up their own businesses, etc. And I think that can be a lonely place. And if you look at certain markets, there's not that many places you can go to as an early stage founder that's not an accelerator program where you can work amongst other businesses. And I think it would be great. And that would be my prediction, is that we're going to become more integrated in these types of workspaces moving forward, where it'll have all the level of amenity in there, such as the meeting rooms, the event space, auditoriums, but will be more of a community and more collaborative in the way that
Bit
we
of a full
work.
circle moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of people are saying that. Like, we're chatting to people who are saying, oh, we're actually going to move away from our offices. We're putting back in a little bit more hot desking. And it's just like that pendulum swing constantly and needing to adapt, I guess, to the way things are going. And we've chatted before about the younger generation coming in as well, and they've never experienced, some of them graduated or got their first jobs during COVID, and they've never experienced the classic kind of corporate office space. So for them, their contrast and context is totally different when they're coming into a space, you know?
Yeah, they don't know what they're missing.
I don't know what they're missing. After work pints being the main thing, but they don't want to do that anyway.
She beat
They
me
all
to
want to
it.
go to higher office.
Yeah.
Not to generalize, guys.
No.
Fantastic. Joe, Graham, any questions from you?
Not at all. No, geez, Joe, thanks so much for your time on that, mate. So much to digest, and incredibly insightful. And a big fan of Manchester for the few times I spent there over the summer, and I can confirm everything you're saying is what I saw when I was over there.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the both of you having me on. I've really enjoyed it. And next time you're in Manchester, give us some warning, and we'll get some time locked in properly.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. You definitely need warning if we're coming over anyway.
Yes, yeah. Give me a couple of weeks to prepare psychologically.
Joe, thank you so much. This has been
Yeah.
Flex That Worx. Thank you so much for joining us on this
No worries.
episode, and tune in for the next one. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Joe.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Worx. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Worx, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.